Well, it's so good to be with you this afternoon. Does this guy have an incredible life or what? What do you think? Richard Branson?
Mark Thompson is the CEO and co-founder of the Virgin Unite Entrepreneur Initiative. He is one of the most successful senior business communication executives and angel investors of our time. Mark Thompson has been a board member and advisor to Fortune 500 and Global 100 companies. He was a member of the board of directors and audit committee of Best Buy Enterprises and co-authored with Brian Tracy, Now Build a Great Business. Years of research and interviews with hundreds of successful leaders around the globe. Thompson helps transform both businesses and individuals alike.
So hello viewers, right now I am in conversation with the one and only and my favorite Mark Thompson, sir. The Legend podcast. This podcast is going to be very valuable for thousands of corporate people or aspiring leaders or me kind of peoples who are really, putting so much effort to educate people, to make them learn the practical and insightful things. And he has been an investor. He is an investor, world's top executive coach. And actually, viewers must be knowing this. I have recently hosted Marshall Goldsmith. He also mentioned about that. What a great person you are going to bring on the show. So thank you
That's
so much.
beautiful. Well, I have to thank you for the great service that you're doing to reach out to thousands of people around the world whose lives you're lifting with every one of your podcasts, including the one that you're doing now, and with my great friend and older brother, as we describe each other, the brother I never had, Marshall Goldsmith.
Right. So Mark, Thompson sir, when I actually put it the story on my Instagram, there is a 30,000 plus people. You won't believe 3,000 people DM'd me that who is this guy? I have seen him. I have seen his seminars on YouTube. You are actually delivering a seminar on actually a company of Apple, right? iPhone and all. You are actually delivering a seminar. Thousands of people, started texting me that what is the journey of this exceptional man. So I'd like to start from your journey. That tell me your journey and who are the top CEOs you have worked with, exceptional CEOs so far. So tell me your journey, sir.
Well, it's an honor to be with you. I was just on the my daily practice of getting coaching, getting feedback, getting, most importantly, feed forward from the great Marshall Goldsmith. We're like brothers every day. We call each other to give each other a check-in, hold each other accountable to the goals that we set, because we are both executive coaches who really just want everyone listening today. We want you to have a better life. We want you to have a more enriched career. And our job, I see my role in life, is to help others become the best possible version of themselves. And so my journey really started with being one of the people who in Silicon Valley, as it was growing up in the early days of the space program in the US, people from 80 nations descended on Silicon Valley. So I, as a native of San Jose, California, in Silicon Valley, was something of a minority, because the best brains from all over the world, from India, from China, from Southeast Asia, from Russia, the great mathematicians, the people who had an aspiration to do something never done before, which was to go into space and to the moon. And so here was this silly little sleepy valley in Northern California that was most popular for growing fruit, where I was picking fruit as a child. all of a sudden became Silicon Valley when silicon was invented, and we had ambitions to go into outer space. So the whole world descended on this mission. And so growing up in an environment where you go from being an agrarian village to one where we were inventing technologies that would affect generations, which would create the name Silicon Valley, and help create a little, what we used to call the farm, Stanford University, to become, along with UC Berkeley and others in that ecosystem, a place where you could come up with new ideas, fail fast, fail frequently, and be developing ideas that weren't just what were done in the past, but we're inventing new ways of contributing to the world, new technologies that would take us farther and faster, well beyond anything that we did in the space program. And we're living it today, from artificial intelligence to every wave of technology. I feel like I've kind of grown up in an ecosystem of disruption, of the belief that all of us together from all over the world, my friends from Delhi, Mumbai, Calcutta at the time, the dear base of people in Bangalore, who I've worked with, Chennai, Rajasthan. These are places, in addition to my pilgrimages to Agra, have been really influential to my life. This is where they grew up. They would come to America, and if we were lucky, we'd keep them to work here in great companies in North America. So my journey included Stanford. I helped create the Venture Design Lab there. I've worked with great CEOs that came through there. I met Steve Jobs way back in high school, as he was an art student, never was an engineer. It was the Woz who was the engineer. So that's the other also thing I learned, was that we all have our superpower, and that it is our job to find others who have different expertise, who together can help you build your dream. Nobody does it alone, as author Dr. Benita Thompson says in her books and in the work that she does. It's all about collaborating for greatness. And so that's what I'm hoping all of you'll do who are listening today. Find those partners to help build your dream.
Exactly, sir. And you are the person who can be friend of anyone, and helping them to grow through your videos, through your works, through your seminars, through your books, right? Sir, I want to ask you one very significant question, which is very, very demanding to ask, which is, you have worked with some of the top CEOs in the world. So what is the traits? I mean, what are the traits that actually separates exceptional leaders from average ones, right?
So I'd say that the first principle that I've learned, and I wrote a book that was a sequel to Built to Last called Success Built to Last. And the subtitle was part of the answer to your question, which is, you get lasting success. In other words, not just one hit, not just one big break, which is often what is glamorized in the press, that these people were overnight successes, that they were able to do this, and we've forgotten all of their failures and all of their face plants and all their train wrecks. And now, when I talk to Jensen Huang at NVIDIA, who's now a rock star, in the 25 years that I've known him, and since he, did his Stanford round, he had a vision of doing this first principle, which is something we've hinted at already, which is, you've got to get really clear about what matters to you, because often you'll hear from coaches, you got to find something meaningful. Yes. But if you're a high achiever, there's lots of meaningful things to do. There's not just one great thing to do with your life. So for the highest achievers, for the CEOs and entrepreneurs that I coach, Jensen Huang could have taken many different paths. He was accidentally sent by his parents to what they thought was a high-end boarding school from Taiwan to the US, and ended up being a halfway house for juvenile delinquents and troubled kids. And so he realized that you better be really clear about what you really want to do and make a difference doing, because there's going to be stresses and distractions, and people all around you may or may not be supporters of you. It's certainly the case when he arrived there, they weren't. So you've got to find out that one thing among the many things that are meaningful that give you a sense of passion. They give you a sense of, frankly, a connection to something bigger than you. In other words, a purpose. Really 3 areas: passion, which is what you do secretly because it's just fun for you; purpose, which is something you do in public because you think it could help others or raise a company, a community, or a cause; and 3, honestly, and this is what's not often talked about, something that you like to win at, something that that you want to, makes you want to walk on the cricket field and not just play a great game, but to perform well at it, to put points on the board. So Jensen decided that the way he could unify a bunch of troubled kids was he loved ping pong, table tennis. And so he started to teach them that. and it was unifying them all towards to improving themselves, getting focused, staying out of trouble. They were able to do their schoolwork better. In other words, there was a focus that he gave them, kind of a focus, and it was a passion. Didn't care if he was really good at it. He wanted to do it with others. He had a cause. He didn't want to die amongst a bunch of troubled kids.
Right.
And third, he wanted to win at table tennis. He became a national champion. Right. It's not the part of the story that you hear, right? So it is a three-part journey that has to do with that purpose that involves others. That's the team that you want to recruit to this dream. It needs to be something that, he would play table tennis whether there was anybody else around or not. That's something that's passionate to him. So that gives him the extra juice that when you're getting tired with building your company and the setbacks or a technical problem that you can't surmount, what's going to keep you going? That you feel like you're making a difference, that you're doing something that's fun. And if I keep working at this, I just might win. That's a triple threat. That makes you able to contribute. And I saw it. We did research. I went to the World Economic Forum. We just had that recently in Davos. I met Jeff Bezos. I met Bill Gates in the day. Then I met the people that they were making their successors. I work with some of those today at Google and Amazon and Microsoft. I have a great opportunity with my Stanford network. A lot of companies that were incubated there and grew up, found the team,
Right.
refined the dream. And then we're able to scale that together as a group. There's a lot of hero worship about individual people. You always talk about who's the one guy or who's the CEO. Well, there's a great team and partnership that has been a part of every single one of those great stories about individuals that you hear.
Right.
So fine.
And actually, sir, I have personally noticed one thing. You have worked with billionaires. So, and actually, my favorite one is Richard Branson, right? You have
Yes.
interviewed him a lot, and you have actually trained his company, actually Virgin, right? So wonderful. So, sir, I would like to ask that what are the similar traits that all billionaires have? I mean, you have met them, you have trained their companies. So, what do you observed by meeting all these billionaires, right?
I say that the most interesting thing about someone like Richard Branson was that I hear this over and over again. A lot of entrepreneurs kind of feel like they can do everything, and then they force themselves to do everything. Now, at the beginning, you have to play all roles when you're building something. One of the hallmarks of Richard Branson is the fact that the first thing he would always do is trying to find other people who were experts at and were driven by all the different players you need on the cricket team. In this case, it would be a business. Who's the person who loves accounting so much that she or he's going to be a real advocate for helping me build this Virgin Galactic? Who are the people who love the idea that they could take civilians into space who are technical in astrophysics? Who are the people who love to market and find a sexy, new, fresh way to attract people to this idea? And so from his very early days, he wanted to be an athlete. He is an amazing athlete. In fact, when you go visit with him on Necker Island, here he is. He just turned, well, he'll be 74 this year. His birthday and my wife's birthday are similar. We're there usually in July when that birthday is being celebrated. And we put a kind of disruptive social group together. And he still beats everybody there at bicycling, at tennis, kite surfing. I mean, I'm such a geek. And I'm, a little bit younger than he. And he still is he's still a ruler of the roost when it comes to the athletics. He loves to win, very competitive. On the one hand. On the other hand, he always makes it about everyone else. And so that's why he's been able to build an organization that's worth billions. Because it's just one guy, right? It isn't just about him. Right. And so there are a lot of famous billionaires who don't behave that way. Mm-hmm. And there are even more who do, because they're building organizations that aren't reliant on that person making all the decisions.
Right.
And that perhaps is the one thing that distinguishes the built to last billionaires, the built to last entrepreneurs, the people who've had an impact for decades. They continue to reinvent themselves. They have a better way to serve, and they find people who also share and want to own that dream as much as they do. And as soon as they let go of just being the only guy in the room, wow, that's when you really grow an organization or a business or a community cause.
That is really wonderful thing you have shared, sir. Sir, I would like to ask that in these days, a lot of youngsters and every entrepreneur from every people, they actually very feel frightened to deal with failures. So what do you have observed that how top performers, confront or deal with failures than the rest of the performers, like average performers, right? What are your insights on failures and how to deal or tackle this, right?
It's interesting if you watch great athletes and you see how they will throw themselves at the project of learning all the skills involved in playing a game. They're the ones that are also the ones that are most bloodied, scratched up, and broken, because instead of thinking about how bad this might make me look, or how foolish, or how humiliated, or how embarrassed I'll be, they actually want still to win. So they're still using remember in the 3 that I gave you, it doesn't include kind of your image. It doesn't include whether I look the smartest or I am the smartest. And yet there's a good reason why we go there. There's a good reason that fear is actually reinforced unintentionally in school. They rank you 1, 2, and 3 in the class. I don't see what the point of that is. All that does is make the other 97 of us feel less than. Right. How are we supposed to? The point in class is that we all become the best version of our talents, our abilities, and our dreams. Right. If there's only 3 people and maybe 1 who matters, that person's going to be very lonely. Right. And often not really be able to build anything significant. So I'd say that we are kind of set up societally to kind of worship the hero, the billionaire, the celebrity CEO, the celebrity. That's one person. And behind them, there's this army who have their own dream. The filmmaker has to have the best cinematographer, the best camera person, the best actor.
The best editor, right.
Everything has to be the best. And the dream has to be about the best film, if that's what they're making as a filmmaker, whether you're a director or whether you're an animator. And so I'd say the difference on the failure thing is that it's okay to feel afraid and do it anyway. That we need to feel the fear, because we are trained. Not only do you have this animal instinct, that amygdala, that fight or flight part of your brain, trying to protect you, trying to make you safe, trying to make you avoid humiliation, embarrassment, or more importantly, the reason it's there is to avoid dying from being attacked by a wild animal. Right. All those things fire up that same circuit, and then it's reinforced all the way through school, and it could be by family members too, expecting the most of you. Now, Richard Branson had the benefit of his parents having pretty low expectations. He wasn't number 1 in school. He expected to be an athlete because he was such a great athlete. Then he blew out his knee, couldn't become a professional athlete either. So some of the great entrepreneurs are the ones who have dyslexia, who would have learning disabilities. The joke at Stanford is that the A students go on to become great professors, and the B students go on to be business leaders, and the C students endow buildings and become billionaires because they were great enough to be a part of an ecosystem of learning. They were great enough to work with their teammates in class, so they did graduate. I think Marshall Goldsmith probably told you during his program, and he mentioned it this morning because it's on his Marshall bot right now, where he talks about he's built into the bot now, explaining that, yes, he was invited to his engineering school to present as the alumni of the year, but he needed to mention he was near the bottom of the class, and he led a standing ovation for the bottom half of the class, saying, if you graduated from here, you have the skill, right, but you also have the humility maybe to build a business faster than the person's always been the top in that class. And that is just not helpful. I mean, I understand the good intentions of saying we should aspire to be the best, right, but if only one person could be number 1, it is a useless and lonely place that we're competing to achieve.
That is very practical thing you have mentioned, actually, if you see, because these are the insights which does not a lot of speakers speak, right? And it is one of the practical things because you lived through them, you lived in their circles, you learned this, and you trained a lot of things. Actually, Marshall Goldsmith mentioned, and actually he has written books on what got you here will not get you there. So
Exactly.
what do you think? I mean, what are the skills that people need to abandon, or actually what are the habits that they should abandon while growing? So what do you think? What got you here will not get you there means, and actually in
Well,
this rapidly changing world, right?
yes.
We need to
My next
enhance.
book, yeah, my next book is called CEO Ready with Harvard Business Review. And what they've asked me to talk about is the fact that I specialize in that big move that
Mm,
ends up being bigger than most people anticipate, which is the arrival to the C level, chief communications, chief strategy, chief financial officer, chief revenue officer. Becoming CEO is now all those C's together.
mm,
And you have to move from being a peer
mm,
in an elite crew to the chief. And so the shift there is that kind of what got you here got you halfway there.
mm.
Uh, the half is that you became an expert. Hopefully, you understand the business. Hopefully, you have been interested in the industry and its development and change. You've been attracting attention from the board of directors and your boss, who's the CEO, because you have been a subject matter expert. You've been able to build teams. Let's say you're running finance and you've become a great chief financial officer. Well, then the question would be, if you're going to be CEO, have you actually run a business? It's great that you understand the financial markets and treasury and banking. That's important. We're shareholders.
Right.
Now, how are you going to prove that you can win hearts and minds over here in terms of running the actual business and vice versa? If you're running a business, how do you know Wall Street? So what I found is the biggest leap for that big step to go to become CEO. It's the fact that rather than taking on more authority, you turn more into a coach because you've got a game of thrones. Each one of the people sitting at your table is a subject matter expert. You want she or he to be the best they can possibly be. You
Right.
want them to be better than you. You want a chief legal officer? Great, right? Do you expect to have to be a better lawyer? No, that won't get you anywhere.
Mm,
So what you do is as you elevate in the organization, you have to make bigger decisions based on greater ambiguity. You
mm.
can't predict the future. You don't know what's going to happen next. Jensen Huang didn't realize his company this week would lose $500 billion in value. Of course, at the same time, he didn't know it would gain $2 trillion in value in the last 6 months. And so, he didn't know that LLMs, large language models upon which AI is based, would be commoditized, and kind of the value of those would become less and less.
Mm.
Uh, and at the same time, the value of AI has become even more valuable
More value,
because
right?
so that's what's happening in this cycle. And so I think it's really important to remember that what we're talking about is what got you here is helpful, but what gets you the rest of the way is when you can rally your peers and your team to greatness and
Mm.
to coach them so they're breaking down barriers rather than being the one, ruler of the world.
Right.
Um, in most businesses, overwhelmingly, in most community organizations, that doesn't scale, as we call it. It's you have to make sure that you have a very smart, capable, experienced group of people that you're empowering, resourcing, celebrating. And once again, that's not a natural skill. Once we usually worship
Right.
um, at the I think the way Dr. Benita Thompson talks about in her books is about this idea of it's almost like the job of the leader is not a prize to be won, but a
Mm.
privilege to be done. It's not just a mandate.
Mm.
You don't have a mandate that lasts. You have to continue to win hearts and minds every single day. And so that's really the biggest journey, I think, the biggest step that you have to take when you become the boss is to realize now you're head coach, which means you can't call all the plays and you don't want to call all the plays. You want to take decision making down into the organization so that the great people around you can prosper and that lifts the whole organization.
That is really very practical things. And sir, I would like to ask that if a person is successful, it means he must have faced a lot of failures, right? Because failure is a
Yes.
chapter of success, right? So I would like to ask you, and a lot of viewers would love to listen, that what are the failures that shaped your career, and actually
Yes.
how did you dealt with all that failures, right, in your journey?
Well, it's not obvious, but I grew up with an eyesight issue that was very much like dyslexia in the sense that it was limiting my ability to read, write, play sports.
Mm,
Um, I obviously since then have written many books. I went to one of the best universities in the world and
mm,
graduated. I have advanced degrees
right.
and I've been able to make it anyway,
Mm,
but never again, just kind of like Marshall, never accused of being at the top of my class. That's probably been my biggest superpower because when I learned that I couldn't do everything, I got help. When I learned that I needed to get extra special help to perform certain types of tasks, I got coaching. And so we mentioned earlier, often if you're the top of your class already and things come easily to you, you
Right.
think you can do everything and do.
Mm.
And the truth of the matter is, as you get higher and higher in your field, you're an expert at fewer and fewer things at the level of expert. In other words, let's say you're moving up through a legal career. You're going to become more and more specialized to be considered an expert in patent law
Right.
or sort of, judicial and criminal law.
Mm.
The leader then really ends up still having to run a wide variety of organizational issues. And so to have the humility to know that you don't know most everything. And the thing is, that you're growing up and you're trying to become number one in your class, you might start to assume, well, maybe I do know everything. Until you get out in the world, you realize that most things you don't know, so you have to get help. I'm Mark Thompson, and I needed help from the beginning, and I still need help. Marshall says the same. I'm Marshall Goldsmith, and I need help. So that is an unnatural act. That's not what we're trained to do. And I think people misunderstand humility. Humility is what a gold medalist has when he breaks the 4-minute mile and realizes next year he can't win another gold running the mile in 4 minutes because somebody's going to go faster. So the vision you have will invite competition. And so you can't rest on your laurels. I'd say that what I realized early on, especially since I was coming from the back of the pack, and I now look back at the kids I went to high school and college with, and I'm at the front of the pack. I'm healthier. I'm longer. I've lived a healthier, more enriched life. I have a long marriage. I have a great family. I've made all the money I ever need to make. And so I feel like that understanding that at every step along the way, every failure is an opportunity to learn. Every failure is a gift. If you're not failing, you're not trying. If you're not having a setback, the friction comes only when you attempt to grow. And so one of the great things that makes Silicon Valleys exist all over the world, in India, in Southeast Asia, and Africa, when I see them, I started entrepreneurship centers with Branson in Africa and Jamaica. You see are people who, against all odds, are willing to have the courage to keep trying and get help.
Right.
And there's not a long line of people behind you. It's will, it's skill, and it's that commitment coming together. So failure, if you're not failing, I don't think you're trying to do anything important.
Right. That is true.
It's a high correlation. The best way to feel like you're not a failure is to stay in bed today. But that won't make you feel good. We are wired to want to feel like we made progress. If there's one thing that's intrinsic to everyone, is that we all want to feel like it mattered that we were here today, that we had impact, that we showed up. When we talk to the various best service organizations, and you talk to the frontline workers who are doing customer service in the call center, they want to feel like they made somebody's day. They want to feel like you gave them the power to make it better for the people they're talking to all day, so they can come off the phone feeling enlivened, enriched. That people have failed, they have a problem, and I helped you solve it, makes me feel terrific. That's most basic human thing, whether you're a billionaire or you're a librarian. You got to feel like you made a difference.
Right. And actually, you have mentioned very practical thing, which if somebody is not failing, it means he's not out of his comfort zone. He's not growing actually. And if we take a
You're not
step
trying.
towards growth, then it is necessary to fail. It is actually, we are entitled to fail because we want to grow somewhere or the other. So that is really true. So I would like to ask that, what is your go-to strategy for handling difficult or high pressure conversations? Because on communication, I'd like to ask this, because sometimes we get a lot of opportunity to talk with billionaires, and a lot of people are struggling to convey their message, what they exactly want to convey in their companies, to bosses, to CEOs, to high performers or top level management. So what are your insights on communication, that what should be their go-to strategy for handling difficult or high pressure situations, right?
There's 3 pieces to courageous conversations. Amy Edmondson, who is the number one thought leader in the world for the last 4 years, is at Harvard. She wrote a book called around psychological safety and fearless conversations. And what's very powerful about it is, and she was just on a Stanford broadcast ranting about the fact that it's nice to be popular for an idea that you have, but she was frustrated because people heard the first half of the idea and then they didn't hear the second half, which she thought was more important. And it comes very much to the idea of these fearless conversations that you need to have in organizations. And the first part is that if you're on a team, imagine if a play got called for the cricket team and they went out on the field and half the people agreed and half disagreed on the team. How effective could you run a play if only half of the people were engaged in it and the other half thought it was a stupid idea? Are you going to win? Is that the way that team will win? No. If you don't agree, then you have to kind of be in a place where you're courageous to say, actually, I think the play would be better going left than right. And then once it's decided, then you have to kind of disagree and commit, but completely commit, because the higher goal is what's important. And this is key to fearless conversations. You need to make it feel safe. This is what she meant by psychological safety. You need to make it feel safe for everybody to speak up. There's two things working against you with that safety. One is, I don't want to sound stupid. So that goes back to the earlier conversation. If you're not feeling like you're failing or you're silly or dumb, then you're not really trying very hard, because you've got to get this new idea across and it's awkward and you can feel inarticulate. So part of the problem is just people feeling safe to say, this isn't baked yet, but I think there's this thing called the internet and it's really going to play out. And maybe at Netflix here, we shouldn't just be sending discs out. We should be actually betting on broadband being big enough to stream content. People are going, stupid. The most powerful company in the world is Blockbuster, and they send out tapes and discs and everything, and you're going to alienate most of your customers who have devices to play these things, and you're betting it on the phone and telephony. Well, it's not baked completely, but I really want to bring this up. So they had those courageous conversations. The people who now have inherited the founder's role as CEO, Reed Hastings, actually, it's all in my neighborhood in Silicon Valley in Los Gatos. The company's there. They were there 15 years ago when they had to make that big decision. They had lots of arguments, but the arguments, so the first principle is you need to feel safe to bring up the stupid. You need to feel safe to bring up the inarticulate, the completely you need to realize that this is a brainstorming session. This is not a judgment session yet. And secondly, then say, okay, so what are the scenarios? What are the views around the table? If we were to take that leap of faith, how might that work? And could we hedge? Could we still sell discs at the same time that we try to see whether we can get a stable platform for streaming content? And then third is this idea that you have a common goal, that we really do want to win this game. And if we're playing the same way the other team does and doing exactly what they're doing, then we're not giving the customer a reason to see us standing out. So you have to take that risk. How am I going to be? This goes also to the 4-minute mile, to the 3-minute mile. Right. Then don't keep on running a 4-minute mile. You're going to be overtaken by others. So how are we going to overtake the market? How are we going to create the value? And they were saying, well, the way we're going to create the value is to make sure that those movies that we're distributing can be anywhere the customer is. And that's not just where the device is. So we need to take a leap of faith that it might be other places, like the phone and the iPad and all the rest. So this idea of the fearless conversation is saying the only thing that's safe is if we, as an organization or a team, can succeed together. That's what's safe. So if it's awkward in the conversation, you've got to say, that's okay. I'm not going to ridicule that you're just telling me something stupid. And most importantly, I'm going to, secondly, argue over the issue, not over judging your character.
Right.
Mark, I don't understand what you're talking about. You can't speak. You're inarticulate. You're stupid. No, that's okay. Actually, maybe all those things are true, but that's not creating safety. So let's say, I don't understand what you're saying. Are you saying this or that? We got to really prosecute and argue over the issue, not the person. So now it's safe to be the odd guy. And now the issue's on the table. Let's argue about that. And then the commitment is the reason we're making ourselves this uncomfortable with this courageous conversation is because we want to win together as a team if we don't address this. And it's interesting, people would be preferring to just have it be my idea that's right, and we sell that,
Mm.
Most people care more about it being their idea
Mm.
than winning, than the team winning. So that's the other thing, is that you'll see with these great leaders, they'll say it's not Mark's idea. Once it's on the table, once it's come from my awkwardness, and now we've said we're going to argue about this, then let's argue about not Mark or George or Deepa. We're going to argue about, let's argue about the issue.
True. Right.
And then the purpose of this courageous conversation is so that we can all win.
Mm.
There are people trying to overtake us, provide a better deal, a better customer experience, whatever it is. If you've been successful, people are coming to get you
Right.
and overtake. Right? I mean, success breeds competition. That's what it does. As soon as you're successful, you'll be overtaken. I mean, and you talk to Jensen Wong at NVIDIA, there's 1,000 companies trying to build a better, faster, easier chip. What scared the market this week was, well, maybe even with a bad chip, you can have a good large language model. Is that really where the value added is? Or is it the software? Or is it the application? So these are questions that allow you to survive and succeed in the long haul. That's why you have the short, immediate, courageous conversations right now. And it ends up being either the fact that I just feel too stupid to describe it. On the one hand, I don't want to be looking silly. And on the other hand, everybody's ego, my idea is the right idea. And that's forgetting the reason we're in this company or this cause or community is for all of us to win together. And that's, once again, that's not how we're trained in school. And that's why we have coaches and why we go get help, so that we can take awkward, messy ideas and risky ideas, start to prosecute them as a group and fail at it, and then make it the one thing that makes us better, faster, smarter than our competitors. I'm intensely competitive. That's the thing. It's like this humility is for the purpose of winning.
Right.
I mean, if I don't debrief what I screwed up on the last run and how I could go faster, somebody's going to go right past me. So that's the thing. I think people, when you say humility, it's not because you think less of yourself. It's because you think enough of yourself
Right.
that you feel like you could get better next time.
Exactly. And same thing mentioned, he also, Stephen M.R. Covey, the author of Trust and Inspire. He also mentioned that humility is not less of that we know, it is actually enough. So it should be. And the practical thing you have mentioned, that we should argue about issues, not each other and actually person. Very
Right.
you have mentioned. And sir, as an investor, what are your insights on how an entrepreneur, a young entrepreneur or a budding entrepreneur, should deal with harsh feedbacks on his ideas, and actually without losing his confidence, that because they initiate their first firm and they are getting negative reviews or negative feedback. So how would you what are your insights on this, how to deal with harsh feedbacks, right?
Well, Steve Jobs, when he was involved with Pixar, would sleep under his desk, and they would be doing continuous customer engagement. The only way to know whether something is valuable to customers is to spend time with customers.
Spend time, right?
And the only way to build a business based on any service or product offering for customers is to solve their problem. And so what we need to know most is, what is our customer's pain point that we are addressing and that we're partnering with them on. And that's messy. I don't know if you've heard of the service Pinterest, the platform that has people share their interests, or certainly was true in every business or industry. The little companies have a huge advantage over big companies. And it's like, why should any small startup ever succeed in a world where the big established players, they have the money, the distribution, they can hire the talent, they can do the advertising, they have the supply chain, they have manufacturing. I mean, just think about they have the credit and the bank scores. I mean, why should there ever be any startup anywhere able to disrupt a big guy? Why would that be? Customers. The little startup can address the issue of the difference between the 3-minute mile and the 4-minute mile, because that's all they've got.
Right.
You don't have all the resources of the big guys. So what do you have? You have a willingness to sit with customers until you get it right.
Right.
Do you serve them in ways that empower them, that create a partnership that's sticky, that makes them feel like you've helped them have a better life, a better day, a better product, a better experience, So that's what large companies usually, once having been successful, that's what people do too. We get complacent.
And actually, sir,
So
the same thing mentioned, Brain Tracy sir as well, because he asked, I was watching his video, he actually asked a question from an entrepreneur. He said, what is the purpose of a company, or actually, what is the actual purpose of a business? Then the audience says, sir, profit, sir, money. He said, no, there is only one purpose, which is satisfy them with your product. Your customer should be the purpose of your company. Then the customer will bring you money, profits, everything. So all we need to care about is that
right.
is.
And the other step that he adds, he and I wrote a book called Now Build a Great Business together. Brian Tracy and I.
Mm,
How Build a Great Business, about a dozen years ago now. And the additional step I would add to what you're describing is
mm,
once having done that, the first priority of the entrepreneur and the boss, non-intuitive, it's something that Richard Branson does, it's something that all the great entrepreneurs do. Who's number one? Once having connected with the customer, who's number one? It's actually the employee.
mm.
The people who serve that customer.
Right.
Because remember, we're talking about not being just an army of one.
Mm,
The entrepreneur, is going to sleep under his or her desk to be there as a partner and solve the problems 24/7 for the client. But that doesn't build a business or last, right? Unless you want to stay a small sandwich shop on the corner. You want 200 sandwich shops. How are you going to solve those problems and those food needs for all those companies that maybe you're catering to in those locations? By making sure you have great employees who
mm.
own as much as you do.
Right.
That's what Branson would tell you. It's like, or some of the great service companies. Who's the number one? Not the customer. Number one is employee
Boy.
who knows that customer. So
Mm,
that's what what Brian and I talked about in the book too, and what he was telling you is the first priority is you can't solve a customer problem, you don't have anything, and that's where prosperity will come. And then people get stuck there. Then you're keeping yourself small. Okay, so if you want now to go from an individual consultant or solopreneur or proprietor, the first thing you do that's much harder than identifying with a customer is finding other employees who
mm.
feel as much an ownership of that outcome as you do.
That is really incredible thing you have mentioned, and actually it is new, for me and for a lot of viewers, that employee is number one thing, and because our employee knows the customer, so that is
Yes, right, right. Otherwise, you're just an army of one. You
the
just
star of
never
one,
scale,
right?
never grow.
Exactly, sir. And sir, I'd like to ask you that what is the difference between growth mindset and fixed mindset, according to your experience, right? That the people who cannot get out of their comfort zone, who cannot get rid of their bad addiction, is this a fixed mindset? And if this, yeah, actually it is fixed, then how to get rid of it? Right.
Yeah, I think one of the best ways to start to think about these, and I do this a lot of my executive coaching and CEO coaching, is that we need to stop calling them mindsets. We need to start thinking about them as behaviors.
Behavior.
So, because then we can take on a whole bunch of things. It's easy to say these people have fixed minds.
Right.
These people have open or growth mindsets. What we're really talking about is not a mindset, but a habit,
Okay.
practice, behavior. So this is also true for lots of things. Am I a jerk or am I behaving like one today? I'd like to think that yes, as a human being, I know I probably, and I'm sure my wife will be the first to tell you that there are days,
Mm,
as we will with all the loved ones in our life, and once again also with your employees. So all of a sudden, if you want to hear an entrepreneur get pissed off and start yelling at employees, why? Because they didn't serve the customer that day. Okay, well, then how are you going to inspire that person to serve the customer and own it? How are you going to show up not like a jerk that day? Just because they thought you, in other words, that you're reflecting maybe the same, I'm a jerk, and then they turned around and they behaved like a jerk, and then I heard you behaving like a jerk, and I'm going to call you a jerk. So, no, the truth of the matter is we are behavioral beings. We have moods. We have sugar crashes. Have you eaten today? What have you eaten? Have you had enough rest? Did you get something to drink? In other words, we want to deny that the fuel makes any difference, but it makes a huge difference. I wear a glucose monitor, and it's shocking how much certain foods at certain times, like now I realize why I was jerk-like in that moment, and why am I feeling calm now? So I think what we need to think about is to break the mindset idea is you don't have a growth or a fixed mindset. The truth of the matter is you have a rolling crest of an ocean of or a pattern of weather that passes through. You have these overwhelming emotions. You have storms that come and go and so forth. The issue is really self-awareness and realizing how am I showing up for each and every interaction? So a lot of the great entrepreneurs, the people who have big businesses and so forth, large organizations, they'll say, okay, I just came from a funeral and I was matching the tempo and the mood and the mindset of that emotion. We were celebrating a person's life. And now I'm arriving at a wedding and then I'm going to a shareholders meeting. Probably the hardest discipline is not whether you have a fixed or a growth mindset.
Right.
The truth of the matter is you're a human being and you've had 12 meetings in 12 different planets. Now I'm going to go to a wedding that night. How do you want to show up for the wedding? Like you did in the meeting where the customer is yelling at you for an hour? Who are you going to yell at? You going to be a jerk or did you just experience jerk-like behaviors in that moment? So to take ownership, the practical thing is stop, breathe. What's success look like in this next interaction? Customer meeting, a date, a conversation with our child. How do I want this? And when you're rushing from thing to thing, that's when you get these settings that you need to adjust. What I want you to do is break the mindset. And the attitude should be, what does success look like in this next interaction? What does success look like in this next meeting? When I was dialing you up for this conversation, I was thinking, okay, I was just talking to one company that's going through bankruptcy. I was just then talking to a company that's about to do its initial public offering and really excited and ebullient. So I think, well, I could take what just happened in the last meeting and let that be my mindset. Or I could say, I'm going to have this amazing conversation with this thought leader who's influencing lots of lives. What's success look like in that conversation?
Exactly, sir. That is one of the practical answers you have given, and I will add success to build a book in the description link. And you have written a lot of books, sir, actually on leadership, on books, and Brain Tracy, you are co-author. You have written a book on that.
Yeah, he put me as lead author because he said, Mark, you're the guy who knows how to build a business. So it's Now Build a Great Business by Mark Thompson and Brian Tracy. Right. Marshall Goldsmith has written the foreword to my New York Times bestselling book called Admired.
21 ways leadership.
Yeah, 21 ways to create value. And Admired is just coming out with its 5th edition now. And the idea there is, how can you be loved, admired, and respected for what you do best and what you care most about? I think everybody would love to think that you're loved, admired, and respected. So we looked at the most admired companies in the world and the most admired people. And we did a study at Stanford, and then working with colleagues at Wharton and Harvard did a world success survey. And we found what it was that will make you the most admired in whatever organization, community, or business that you want to be a part of.
That is great. And actually the book is actually available on Amazon, right? It is out.
Yes. Right.
Viewers, I will add link of Admired, Success to Build, and Brain Tracy books. So thank you so much, sir, for being on the show. And a lot of viewers has made the most of your practical advices, the lessons you have learned, you shared, and you actually expressed on communication and on leadership, and actually the traits that really separates exceptional leader from average. So it is a wonderful session, and I'm very grateful to host you. So thank you.
Thank you. It was an honor. I appreciate it. Thank you for the wonderful work that you do and the contribution you're having. And thank you for everyone listening today. I hope today you'll make it your best ever. Please reach out. Please reach higher and get help from wonderful people around you.
You can follow him, Mark Thompson, sir, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and on Instagram. Everywhere he's available. On his websites, you can read posts. So that's how you can really connect with him. And thank you, viewers, for being so far. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.